Okay, okay, right. What I want to just cover first of all is one of the problems that many people face is we've got this absolute mess of documentation that we have to work to on street design. And I produced this little chart to try and make some sense of it, and just because everyone talks about rules, and you can't do this, but actually not all the rules are rules, and you need to know that, because if you're going to start challenging things, you need to know what weight different things have. So this kind of explains it, I hope. Parliament makes the law, obviously. The government produces guidance, policy and research to advise people what to do. But as the Department for Transport would tell you, we are not a highway authority, which I think is a bit of a cop-out, actually, because... sorry, don't film this bit. They kind of say, do this, but if you want to do something different, you can, because you're a highway authority and we're not a highway authority. You can make your own decisions, but if it all goes wrong, don't blame us. You know, so there's a little bit of kind of, I think, an absence of leadership from the DFT on some of these things. But they do produce guidance, they produce policy, and they do some research. Probably not enough, but they do some. The highway authorities set design standards, and you in the room who represent highway authorities can set what design standards you like for your highways, and no one can criticise you for that, as long as they're sensibly based and rational. They are your standards. Now, the Highways Agency and the Welsh Assembly and the Scottish Executive produce this DMRB, which everyone uses, but actually it's just the highway standard for the trunk road network. And local authorities can use bits of it or could ignore it as you see fit. And so local authorities have their own standards which do not have to comply with a DMRB at all. And then you've got all these other bodies like TRL and IHT producing other guidance documents that you can dip into. So I hope that's kind of useful. Moving to a lot of what I've been talking about is residential roads, and apologise for that. But on national residential roads, what we've got at the moment is DB32, which has got some quite nice words in it. Residential roads and footpaths, integral part of the housing layout, pedestrians, cyclists are given priority in design. But in reality, all the engineers don't read the words, I'm afraid. Engineers read numbers and planners read the words. And the numbers tend to win because they're very easy to understand. So DB32 says 50 to 300 dwellings, 5.5 metre carriageway. When you've got 301 dwellings, I don't know what you do. Well, you're then out of the realm of DB32. And where are you? We'll come back to that. And it has all these things that says crossroads are terribly dangerous. So Graham's layouts of gridded networks, we can't have those because they're the most dangerous form of junction and should be avoided. So we're kind of left in a bit of a problem, really. All this urban design stuff doesn't fit with the only national piece of roads guidance we've got apart from DMRB. So a bit of an issue. And then it leaves these sort of big gaps. So we've got DB32 doing, and Placing Streets and Movement, which tried to put a gloss on it, or lipstick on a pig, as somebody once said. And we're doing the kind of residential bits. And you've got DMRB doing those bits. And then all the other streets, we've got nothing really, So you want to design a road between 300 dwellings and a motorway. Where do you turn to, Department for Transport? Bit of a problem, really. What I want to say, therefore coming from that, as a kind of example, signs and markings, which everyone kind of grapples with and create a lot of clutter, and we all sort of, well, some people want more signs, some people want less signs. TSRGD, traffic signs regulations and general directions, is statutory. That's what Parliament makes. And that must be followed. It is that if you have this sign, it has to look like this, and it says if you have this road marking, it has to go with this sign. But it doesn't tell you what to put where. The choice of what road sign you put up is entirely up to the highway authority, whether you need a sign or don't need a sign. And traffic signs manual, because TSRGD is a difficult document to understand, I think it was some report in the 80s or 60s, I don't know, 60s I think, said we need a manual to tell people how to do it. And so they produced a traffic signs manual, which is constantly being updated and reviewed. But it is only guidance. Traffic signs manual fits into that tier of guidance that government produces, which you can ignore. You can ignore. And the government would say, well, don't ignore it capriciously. If you're going to go against it, have good reasons for doing so. But all you have to do is work to the traffic signs regulations. So if you miss the sign out, you can't be criticised. You can't get it wrong. If you put it in, you have to have it in accordance with the law. And so with some principles, that these are things that we're saying in Manual for Streets. We should minimise clutter. Signs only have to be put up in relation to traffic orders. So if you have a traffic order, you have to sign it. But less can be more. And Wiltshire and Starston are some places where they've taken road markings out to benefit of road safety. In Wiltshire, they remove some centreline markings and traffic goes slower as a result. So less can be more. A bit about Manual for Streets. It's being launched on the 29th of March. We're in the final knockings of the drafting, and the sort of blood's spilling around the room at the moment and arguing about clauses. But this is what it's trying to do, and we've got a kind of mission statement. So it says, and these aren't kind of roady aims really. So to start with, building and strengthening communities. So streets that do face each other and people that can feel comfortable coming out on, so that they do that. The needs of all, disabled people, inclusive design, effective and well connected, pleasant and attractive, cost effective and acceptably safe. And actually, I think the word acceptably, I tried long and hard to argue for that, because it is the reality. Nothing is absolutely safe, but it's been taken out. So it now says are safe, whatever that means. So roads and streets. So we've got design manual for roads, manual for streets. What's the difference? Well, apparently road means you rode along it, and it was placed, took you from place to place. What we say in I think it was in the draft, I think it's survived, a highway with the main function being to accommodate movement. So, that's what it's for, is to go somewhere. A street, we're saying in MFS, is a highway that has important functions beyond just the movement of traffic. So, Kensington High Street, Shopping Street, Bala in North Wales, really nice little high street with echelon parking, very vibrant, works really well. Go there. Holmesland Street in Denmark with a playhouse on it that has a function of play. And I think there are other photographs in this street of people coming out and having birthday parties in the street. So, it has these functions. Hierarchies. So in Radburn and DB32, we had these, and well, Holmeshouse didn't exist, but we had these hierarchies, and you went from the national district, and this hierarchy was based on traffic flow. So the busier the road, you went to a different point on the hierarchy. And it's only in DB32 that you're allowed to have frontage access and driveways when you get to access roads. Everything else, if you read it, more than 300 dwellings, you're meant to have back fences and no direct access, which hardly makes for pleasant streets. And you get that kind of thing, obviously, which I don't mind telling you, was Bedfordshire's highway standard until quite recently for residential roads. With very kind of clear things. And that's in America, but is the kind of place or non-place that you get. And where does the high street? Well, the high street doesn't fit in that at all, because it's none of those things. So what Manual for Streets will say is we should have a two-dimensional hierarchy. And this is taken from the Artists project that UCL did, or the concept is taken from Artists. And what it says is that some streets or some highways are more important than others in terms of their movement function. And they define that function in terms of how far the journey is. So is it a local journey or national journey at the other extreme? So you can see that we got a motorway is there to provide a national movement from one of the countries to the other. But you can put the same axis on place. Some places are of quite local importance. Some places are of national or even international importance. And I did shift Iron Bridge just to the right of Trafalgar Square because it's a World Heritage Site. So people, and it's in the Midlands, so people would come to the Iron Bridge from all over the world. So with that axis, you can say, well, okay, a small town high street, yes, maybe have a city function, and Kensington High Street, actually that's probably slightly out, isn't it? There's a city function. But it's also a district/city place, and what we do to that street shouldn't just reflect its movement function. We should recognise in the design of what we do in that place its importance as a place as well. And this doesn't really tell you how to do it, but it just kind of hopefully frees the mind and says, well, we can't have that here because it's an important place. And that is of equal importance to its function as a movement space. So that's got very little place function, has it? It's for moving around. It's got very little. Trafalgar Square, pretty important place. So the street functions. There's a document called Paving the Way that CABE produced. They said similar things. They had 5 functions for streets. Place and movement are the ones we've kind of picked up in Manual for Streets, but there are some other ones. Access, so as well as kind of moving around, a street is a place of getting into buildings on foot, by car, whatever, that's what you do. And it's a place for parking. That's a pretty important function of streets. And it's a place for drainage and utilities, the things that you can't see. So I think that's quite a useful kind of checklist. And you can express those functions. This is Crown Street in the Gorbals, new buildings in the Gorbals in Glasgow. And these lovely bollards have a function of narrowing traffic at that pinch point, but they have a pretty important place function as well. They look really good. 7 Dials in London. I love this picture because the car's going the wrong way around, even though it's not a roundabout. And so is it going the wrong way around? I don't know. But that has a function in the middle of a place for people to sit, and as well as a piece of kind of a monument and art. And that's a home zone in Manchester that has a fantastic function as a place for play. Within Manual for Streets, getting to some of the engineer stuff, we've challenged some of the, or TRL who've worked on this, challenged some of the orthodoxies in terms of the numbers. We've challenged some of the numbers. What they did, they looked at different layout types, historic, some what CABE considered to be good practice, and other new build case studies, and some DB32 compliance sites, and looked at the relationship between the geometry and speeds and casualties. And then we also looked at the effect of junction spacing and crossroads using the TRL SafeNet package, where you put the traffic flows in and you model how many accidents you're going to get. This is really important. What TRL found is, well, comes as no surprise to Graham, but the more visibility you give drivers, the faster they go. And the wider the road, the faster they go. Now, if you subscribe to the robot theory of driving, i.e., this is a 20 mile an hour or this is a 30 mile an hour road and we have a sharp bend, people will go around that sharp bend at 30, therefore we have to put the visibility back so they can go at 30. Well, this challenges that. What this says is if you narrow the visibility down at that bend, you actually reduce the speed of people going around it. So, it does turn things on its head rather, and it does free people up to approach the whole design of streets differently. I'd refer you to another document, TRL Report 564, which I think you can get for download, which looks at traffic calming from a psychological point of view. And we're doing a bit of work actually I'm doing some work with TRL now for TfL on a bus route in South London, looking at whether we can use psychological traffic calming to slow traffic in Catford and a route down there. And what TRL 564 did a big literature review and found these kind of features do tend to slow people down by evidence and by interviewing drivers. And so, trees close to the road, buildings close to the road, statues, monuments, interesting structures like 7 Dials. A big driver is the presence of pedestrians. There's a kind of hardwired in our heads that we don't like to kill each other, So if there are people on the street, it does tend to slow people down. And that's why shared surfaces work, because if you are driving through a space where there are people, you will go more slowly. It's the same thing with cyclists in pedestrian areas. When the density of pedestrians goes up, eventually the cyclist dismounts because you just don't feel comfortable forcing your way through people. Carriageway width we've seen, absence of central median, or in fact a wide central median seems to have a similar effect. Parked cars does slow people down. The more on-street parking is an effect. Absence of white lines, cycle lanes, and shared space in 564 was written 3 or 4 years ago. The shared space concept, Exhibition Road, was just coming in, but I think there's been a lot more work done since then. So I'd refer you to that to have a look at. Some of the key recommendations of Manual for Streets, I'll rattle through these fairly quickly. Team approach. What we're saying is that streets are incredibly complex places. No one profession should have the dominant view. The only way you'll get the right view is by having multidisciplinary teams on both the developer side, where it's private sector, or on the local authority side to get this, because there aren't the absolute rights or wrongs. Everything is a trade-off and a compromise. The network of streets we've seen, these horrible spidery diagrams are an attempt for the top one is traffic flows on a DB32 layout in Leicestershire by calculating where all the traffic would go at the peak hours. We connected the roads up, redistributed all the traffic. There are more junctions in the bottom one, but they're more lightly trafficked because you've spread the traffic out. Ran TRL SafeNet package on both of them, and there's hardly any difference. So what it says is you can have connected networks, and it doesn't make, at these levels of traffic flow, doesn't make a lot of difference because you're dispersing the traffic over a greater number of junctions. Oh God, I've got loads to go. Oh God. Pedestrians first. Master plan. Well, what should I say? Quality audits. Right.